think for layer 1s and layer 2s, the tokenomics themselves are still pretty nascent. There hasn't been a lot of development on the tokenomics side for layer 2s. I think this is in large part because layer 2s are still quite young. They're still quite early. Most of them still don't have their training wheels completely off.
Okay.
And so if you look at the fraud proofs, the multi-sigs, all this stuff is really still there because layer 2s are not mature enough yet to be able to take all of that off and just hope that the system is robust enough and secure enough and that it won't get hacked and the fraud proofs are perfectly without bugs. I think it'll be some time before we see the full, Vitalik often calls them level 1 roll-ups. I think we're still a ways away from being ready for that. And so as a result, I think it's okay right now that the tokenomics are still on training wheels. I think it'll be some time before we see them fully mature.
This episode of Encrypted is sponsored by the HBAR Foundation. The HBAR Foundation cultivates vibrant economies and ecosystems on the Hedera network by providing financial, community, and marketing support for projects, attracting millions of users and billions of dollars to the ecosystem.
Welcome to the Encrypted podcast, your gateway to the future of technology and innovation, right here in the heart of Dubai's dynamic tech universe. I'm your host, Maria Vovchok, and together with Dubai Blockchain Center, we are embarking on a journey that unravels the minds of tech visionaries through the digital frontiers that are shaping our world.
Hello and welcome everyone to the Encrypted podcast. I'm your host, Maria Vovchok, and today we're really happy to have here Haseeb Qureshi, who's the managing partner at Dragonfly Capital, a venture capital firm focused on investing in and supporting leading Web3 startups. He's also a programmer, a writer, a teacher, a public speaker, and effective altruist. Haseeb has taught a class on Web3 entrepreneurship at UC Berkeley. He also used to teach a class on cryptocurrencies for programmers at the Bradfield School of Computer Science. Before that, Haseeb was a mental coach and wrote a book called The Philosophy of Poker. And before that, he was a top-ranked high-stakes professional poker player. When he has free time, Haseeb is studying early American history. Is that correct, Haseeb?
That is correct.
What else do you believe our audience should know about you that maybe I haven't mentioned yet?
I think you pretty much covered it. I've been now in the Web3 space for coming up since 2017. I've been in the space full time.
Okay.
And at this point, it's my entire life is crypto.
May I ask you, how is it to be an effective altruist? Because it's pretty interesting. We can think about altruism from different perspectives. But from your perspective, what is effective altruism?
So effective altruism, it's a philosophy that is oriented around trying to do the most good possible in a rigorous way. So most people, when they think about doing charity or they think about trying to be improving the outcomes of other people in the world, they often tend to turn their brains off.
Okay.
And they tend to think more with their emotions than with their logical mind.
Okay.
Now, that being said, when we do business, when we do engineering, when we do the things that we know really, really are important, we're very, very careful. We're very rigorous in making sure we understand every angle of how this thing works and is really productive. But we think that with charity, which is maybe one of the most important things that we do, that we don't need to think that carefully about it.
Okay.
And so effective altruism is almost a challenge to people in, can you think more carefully and more rigorously about doing charity and doing good for others in the same way that we do about everything else that matters?
By the way, as I mentioned as well, you used to be a professional poker player. Do you still play poker? I
don't. I basically played poker professionally for about 5 years.
Okay.
And since then I've played maybe 3 or 4 games in the last decade.
And you actually mentioned that there are a lot of similarities between poker and crypto, which are?
So poker is a game that exposes you to a lot of volatility, because naturally when you're playing cards and you have the luck of the draw, you have to go through a lot of ups and downs as a poker player. Anybody who's in crypto knows what that experience is like.
Yes. And
the other thing about being a professional poker player is that it's a job it's a little bit weird. It's a little bit subversive. Crypto now has come into the mainstream in a much bigger way, but when I first got into the space, crypto was still very weird and subversive. It was the kind of thing that, before I came into crypto, I was working at Airbnb as a software engineer. And Airbnb is a very well-known company. It's a kind of a high-status Silicon Valley job. And going from that into crypto, many people used to think like, oh, it's kind of scammy. What are you doing? Are you sure that this is really good for your career? Now it's very different. Now crypto is a lot more respectable than it was at that time. But I think in that way, crypto, much like poker, it tends to attract people who are not afraid of looking weird.
Okay.
And who maybe are more risk tolerant than the average person.
Okay. Can I ask you, in this case, if you are a poker player and, as you mentioned, in this case, you're taking risks, how often do you take risks from your perspective as a personal, like angel investor, as a partner at Dragonfly Capital?
So in my professional life as an investor, risk is everything. The only way that you can back a startup that has the potential of being a 100x investment is by investing in something that really, truly has a lot of uncertainty.
Okay.
So in investing, we take risks all the time. In my personal life, I'm actually a lot less of a risk taker.
Okay.
So, I don't gamble. I don't have any kind of weird, attraction to thrill seeking or physical danger. But in investing, even when I was a poker player, so being a professional poker player, you're surrounded by a lot of gamblers and a lot of people who are professional gamblers. For them, it's not so much of a profession as it is a just kind of mental, something that they're drawn to like moths to a flame. And I was never that way. Is that although I was somebody as a poker player, I was very aggressive and I was willing to take a lot of risks.
Okay.
I never wanted to take risk for its own sake.
Okay.
In the sense that I don't enjoy gambling. It's not fun for me in and of itself. Gambling to me is a necessary evil because when you take a lot of risk, you can potentially win a lot of reward. But if the reward is not there, I don't take any pleasure in betting on coin flips or pulling a slot machine. So I've spent probably $50 in my entire life gambling in a casino outside of the poker table.
From your perspective, how the current cycle is different from the previous one, from the perspective of an investor focused on Web3?
So every cycle in crypto is different, but they each rhyme.
Okay.
So there's a similarity in how you see the animal spirits start to converge, some new narratives start to congeal, and then of course there's a sense that, maybe we've overinvested in this concept or this narrative isn't quite panning out. Everyone gets despondent and the cycle sort of does its sine wave.
Yeah.
I'd say this cycle, what it's really been defined by is the institutional embrace of crypto. So whether it's the Bitcoin ETFs, whether it's BlackRock, Fidelity, Goldman Sachs, PayPal, all these institutions now coming into the space and committing themselves to what's happening in Web3 as being a part of their future business. I think the pullback in markets, it seems like it's actually largely driven by macro, more so than it is endogenous to crypto. But every cycle is different. And it's very difficult to predict when the cycle ends and what are going to be the things that take it down. So last cycle, really it was both, one, interest rates hiking that ended the last cycle, but also the idiosyncratic explosions of a lot of things in crypto. So whether it was Luna, whether it was Terra, whether it was BlockFi, and then of course culminating in FTX. So in this cycle, I don't think it's very likely that the way the cycle ends is going to be similar to the way that cycle ended. But there will always be something that overstretches and naturally has to get reined back in for crypto to normalize.
You also mentioned that, like, when we observe the current trends, obviously every VC every VC company is following what is happening and what are the current trends and what exactly you have to focus on.
Yeah.
Let's say right now, you stated that crypto AI projects are overhyped and overstated. In what way? In which crypto AI projects?
So I'm not in the business of calling out individual projects or claiming that any
like,
individual person is overvalued.
What exactly do they offer that you find really that is overhyped?
So I think in general in the crypto AI space, I want to be clear first and foremost. Crypto AI is a space that I'm spending a lot of my time in right now, and I'm chatting with a lot of founders. And the interesting thing about crypto AI is that it attracts a lot of the smartest people who are coming into the space right now. That being said, the problem with crypto AI is that, and it's a very common problem in crypto, which is that the introduction of tokens and the introduction of liquidity mining creates a lot of supply, but isn't actually able to create demand. And right now, what you see in a lot of the crypto AI platforms is that we've been able to aggregate a lot of supply. So there's a lot of GPUs, there's a lot of inference capacity, there's a lot of models that are available, but the demand side is not there yet. And it's very difficult to create a valuable network without demand. That's the biggest problem today.
what do you believe can drive this demand?
So it's hard to say. Usually it tends to be either one, that you get a small number of breakout applications that drive a lot of that demand, or second, it may be that crypto AI hasn't really found its value proposition yet. And once that value proposition is found, and that may come inadvertently, may come through a third party. So what I mean by that, take something like OpenAI or ChatGPT. Is ChatGPT available in Dubai?
Yes, of course.
It is, okay. Well, in other countries it's not available, right? So there are some places that I've traveled to. So I believe in Japan, you can't use ChatGPT.
For what reason? Do you know?
Just government regulations. There's presumably some laws that Japan has passed that it makes it impossible to use ChatGPT. So when I was in Japan just a month ago, ChatGPT was not accessible. I had to go use Claude instead of using ChatGPT. So it may well be, we're in the early days of AI where there's not a lot of regulation yet, and the regulation is still being argued about by politicians. Once that regulation is in place, it may well be that most people don't actually have access to the models that they want to be interacting with. In a way, that's part of the reason why crypto has managed to be so successful within finance, because finance is so regulated, and there's so many constraints on what people can do around the world, when really what they want is to all have access to the same things. That's what crypto and decentralized finance offer to people. You may see the same story with stablecoins. Sorry, not with stablecoins, with AI, is that people want to interact with ChatGPT. They want to interact with Llama 405B or any of these models, but their governments, their regulators might not allow them to. And so the value proposition for crypto AI may be that governments start controlling and censoring your access to these models, or what these models are allowed to do or allowed to say to you. And you as an individual don't like that. And you want to get access to these models nevertheless. And a decentralized, censorship-resistant network may be the way that happens. But that is contingent on how are these governments and politicians going to decide to regulate what may end up being the most important technology of the 21st century. And that we still don't know.
Do you see any of this kind of projects, decentralized AI projects, that you might be excited about?
So there's one in particular that I've been following very closely called Exo. Exo, they're basically building an inference capacity on top of iPhones. So iPhones and MacBooks, so the sort of consumer Apple devices. At the moment, most of the AI inference that's happening is happening on GPUs. And GPUs, of course, are very powerful. They're dedicated devices that are good for AI tasks. But the reality is that there's so much compute on phones that if you aggregate all of the compute, all of the flops available on all of the iPhones in the world, there's actually more capacity on iPhones than there is in all of the NVIDIA A100s, H100s, B100s combined. There's just so many iPhones out there. And even though all of them are low-power devices, if you can get these low-power devices to start contributing their compute to these AI jobs, that could actually unlock a huge amount of supply and inventory for latency insensitive inference jobs. So that's one thing I think is going to be very, very interesting to see how crypto economics and AI can come together to start unlocking a lot of the idle compute that exists in the world. That's something I'm very interested in.
Hedera is the most used, sustainable, public distributed ledger in the world. These are just a few of the game-changing applications built on Hedera, which is governed by the world's leading organizations and fueled by HBAR, the world's greenest cryptocurrency. What future will you build?
Can you tell me, over the last couple of years, how has the Dragonfly investment approach evolved? And how right now, when you see it, like some of the startups that you mentioned, how, when you, let's say, see them, spot them, how do you analyze them first and foremost? And what exactly are you shifting in terms of investments right now?
Yeah. So when we meet a project, it really depends on the kind of project that we're looking at that decides how we're going to analyze and underwrite it. So let's say we're looking at a traditional business, let's say it's a data company or an analytics company or something like that. So there's no token, there's no decentralized network, but they service the crypto economy in some way. In those kinds of businesses, the way that we do underwriting, it's very similar to what you'd see from a traditional VC, which is that we play around with the product, we get an understanding of the revenue and the growth numbers, we look at their go-to-market, we look at their unit economics, these kinds of things, and of course we want to understand what are customers saying when they enjoy this product. Now, if we're looking at a protocol, then the way you analyze a protocol is very different from the way that you analyze a traditional company. So let's say we're looking at a layer 1 or a layer 2. So the first thing, we're going to look at the white paper. We're going to try to understand if there is a white paper or some kind of technical spec to understand, one, what are the technical chops of these founders and how much of this have they actually built versus what are they storytelling about. Second, we want to understand the performance characteristics of the chain that they're building. If in fact there is a testnet or a proof of concept that we can actually start to see some preliminary performance numbers, that's an important input to understanding, especially if it's a performance-based story that they're telling. We're going to want to look at the differentiation between the other kinds of layer 1s and layer 2s that are on the market with respect to virtual machine, consensus, the programming model that they have available, or even just the go-to-market or the framing of what this L2 is going to be optimized for. So there are many different things that we look at, and the way you evaluate those founders is even different, right? So oftentimes the founders who are successful building protocols, they tend to not be the kind of founders who are traditionally successful at building businesses. You get a lot of, we like to call them pirate founders, where they're kind of weird, they're very cantankerous, they are extremely opinionated, they very often didn't go to elite schools or have a very elite pedigree. So think like Vitalik or Hayden or some of these folks who are a little bit crazy and they would only really work in this industry. And if they were building a B2B SaaS company, it would just be, absolutely not, no way. But in crypto, very often these people are the most successful kind of founders. So those are the kind of things that we look for when we're underwriting an investment.
Yeah. When you talk to a VC fund and you ask them what exactly you're interested, like when you're talking about the company, they all the time say, we're interested because we're investing in the team. So when you watch this, like in this case, how do you analyze, is this the team, the dream team that I want to invest in, or is it still the product? Especially from the perspective of a programmer, because you can definitely analyze whether it's EVM compatible layer 1 or not. So can you please tell me, in this case, whom would you choose? Would you choose a team, like the member, the founder, I want to invest in this person, or I'm choosing what? I'm choosing a product.
It's always a confluence of the two.
Okay.
The one thing, it also depends on the stage.
Okay.
So if you're investing at pre-seed or seed, then it's mostly about the founder. And as the company grows and gets later in its life cycle, then it becomes more and more about the product and the market. So the three legs of the stool of any investment are team, market, product. And different investors tend to prioritize different parts of the stool. And it also shifts by stage. So in the very, very early stage, it's just founder. And you can assume almost nothing because almost certainly there's going to be changes, there's going to be pivots, they're going to change the idea, they're going to migrate in the direction of what's most promising. As you get further along, it becomes more about market in that, is this a market that's growing, that this founder can find something that is actually worth building? If you're building in NFTs in the year 2024, it's like, okay, well, this is a tough time to get into the NFT market, right? That's a shrinking market at the moment. But if this was, let's say 2020, and you are building something in DeFi, it's like, okay, well, that's an expanding market. That's exactly the kind of place where if you're a smart founder, potentially you can find something within this ecosystem to carve out a niche and grow into something really big, right? And then as you get later and later in the progression of a startup, that's when it really becomes about product, which is, look, I already understand the founder, I already understand the market. Now you got to let the numbers do the talking, right? Which is, okay, what's your growth? What's your revenue? What's the retention of the product? All of those metrics start to really dwarf how much is it a bet on the team and how much is it a bet on the market. Because at that point, the team and the market have already done their work. If the company itself is not growing in a sustainable way, then at the later stages, the company itself and the metrics are the most important thing.
You actually mentioned in one of the interviews that sometimes the most important thing are the trends, not even the time when you exactly invest, on which stage it is. So usually Dragonfly chooses very early stage.
That's right.
And in this case, how do you make sure that this is definitely how can you predict that this will be the early, let's say, one of the top layer ones? I won't name any, but we'll talk about two more in 2 minutes.
How do we predict? The honest answer is that we don't.
You are a programmer, so how, for example, are you analyzing in this case all the layer ones, for example, if we're talking about layer ones, layer twos, from the tech perspective?
We are. And as a technologist, I have a lot of intuitions about what are promising paths to go down when it comes to building infrastructure and what are likely to be dead ends. But all that being said, the mantra I often tell to the investment team is that our job as investors is not to predict the future, because nobody can predict the future.
Yes.
Our job as investors is to notice the present.
Yeah. Because in this case, you have to have it.
Yes, but the important thing is that very often the pieces that go into understanding whether or not a project are going to be successful is already right there in front of you. You have to see it. You have to really understand, who is this founder? What is their DNA? What is it that really drives them? How much energy and capacity and drive do they actually have? Now, when you're getting pitched by somebody, everybody knows what they're supposed to tell you. They're supposed to tell you, I'm a visionary, I'm going to work so hard, I'm driven by nothing but building things. And the thing that a lot of junior VCs tend to get wrong is that they tend to think too much about the credentials of a founder, and they tend to trust the story the founder is telling them more than their own gut is telling them about another person.
Okay.
And the reality is that, your gut feelings about just sitting across from a table, looking at somebody and understanding who they are and what they're about is really, really, really good. It has been attuned over thousands of years of evolutionary history to be very good at understanding people. And the more educated people become, the less they trust their own instincts, and the more they think, oh, this person went to Harvard, this person went to Coinbase, they did this, they did that, and look, I don't quite feel that this guy is the real deal, or that this girl is going to completely reinvent this technology, but they have all the right credentials, and so, okay, maybe I should just give them my money and trust that I don't understand that. So the more experienced you become as an investor, the more you learn. The number one thing is to trust your own intuition. As an investor, your job is to sit across from a table with somebody and really understand, are they telling the truth or not?
Yeah.
Are they really being their whole self, or are they selling you? And most of the time, the answer is they're trying to sell you. But occasionally you will come across an amazing founder, and that is when your intuition needs to speak loud and clear and get you to make an investment.
Understood.
Encrypted is your exclusive ticket to the epicenter of technological innovations in the MENA region.
We are here right now at Token 2049 in Singapore, and I was really interested to listen to one of the co-founders of one of the crypto exchanges who said that a couple of years ago he didn't believe when Vitalik wanted to list Ethereum on his crypto exchange, and after that, like, nobody would expect, he did not expect that Ethereum would be like right now the top second cryptocurrency. He believed at that time that it was just another altcoin.
Right.
From your perspective right now, when we see the rise of Ethereum, Solana, when we talk about, like, for example, Ethereum with EVM compatible blockchains rising, with Solana with its own virtual machine rising.
Yeah.
First of all, do you see some new EVM or not EVM compatible blockchains coming that are really interesting? Or how, for example, this virtual machine is changing from the tech perspective?
Yeah.
Maybe you've seen some fascinating gems that we haven't heard of. You may name them or not, but in this case, from the tech perspective, what do you see something really valuable that is definitely worth looking into?
So there's a couple projects on the horizon that I'm very excited about, in which I'm also investors. One of them is a project called Monad. So Monad, we led their seed round. We've been watching the team develop their project over a long time. And what they are trying to do is they're trying to rebuild the Ethereum stack from the ground up to be a much more modernized, high-performance blockchain in the spirit of Solana. So the question is, can you create Solana-level throughput in a decentralized layer 1 that is still compatible with Ethereum and still obeys all the Ethereum semantics? That's a project I think, right now they've got a lot of excitement, a lot of energy behind them. It's probably one of the most hyped projects in Web3 right now. But they're building more on the layer 1 side. There's another project that is also building in an EVM compatible way, but that is more on the L2 side, called Mega ETH. And Mega ETH, they're a project that essentially tries to build a super high-performance sequencer. So most of the sequencers today on layer 2s, these are the nodes that actually run the blockchain for the layer 2. These sequencers, for the most part, are kind of normal commodity hardware. But what Mega ETH is trying to do is it's trying to scale up the sequencer to basically be almost a high-performance computing device. So think almost like a supercomputer. If you could run a blockchain on a supercomputer, how much faster would you be able to get in terms of throughput, in terms of latency, in terms of all the characteristics that you want from a blockchain? So that's an experiment that is Still in the early days of figuring out how is this going to enable new use cases and new types of applications. It's not quite as decentralized as something like a layer 1 or something like a monad, but it has with it very, very different performance properties than any other blockchain that exists. So you can get lower latency than Solana. You can get higher throughput than Solana if you have this kind of architecture. So that's one that I'm very excited about. Both of these projects are probably 6 to 12 months away from actually launching their mainnets. But I think once they do, they're both going to make a big splash in the EVM ecosystems.
Are you expecting that they may overshadow some of the existing EVM-compatible blockchains, even like the top, the one that you mentioned earlier, Ethereum and Solana?
I think Ethereum and Solana are the juggernauts of the space. They're hard to beat.
Okay.
So oftentimes when I think about layer 1s and layer 2s, I often analogize them to cities.
Okay.
And building a new layer 1 is kind of like building a new city. So if let's say you have Dubai. Dubai is a mega city, right? It's a metropolis in the UAE. Now many people are interested in potentially founding a new city. When you found a new city, you're starting from scratch. You have all this greenfield. You can do things completely new when you have a new city, right? So Dubai is like, oh, the traffic sucks, and this is bad, that is bad. I wish this thing was better. When you start a new city, you can really start from scratch. It's completely greenfield. But it's very difficult to build it all the way up to the level of development of a place like Dubai and have enough people who come there. That doesn't mean that new cities are never created. Every city was a new city at some point. And so we know that it's possible for new cities to arise that can become metropolises. But it's a lot of work. It's very, very difficult. And so the way I hear your question is almost, okay, do you believe that if we built a new city in the UAE, that it would destroy or displace Dubai? And I would say, no, I don't think that's the right way to think about it. I think if we had a new city in UAE that was a rival to Dubai, I think it would be amazing. I think that would make Dubai even better, to have another city that is also attracting people and attracting more commerce and more GDP. In the same way, the rise of Solana has not been bad for Ethereum. It's been good for Ethereum because now there's even more people who are coming into the tent of crypto and increasing the total GDP of the crypto economy. And so I think the same thing is true for Monad, for Mega ETH, for Avalanche, for anything new that's coming into the space and competing with these things. I think more cities in any country is only a good thing, never a bad thing.
So in this case, you can even compare them to smart cities because other than that, like the more smart cities there are in the world, like the better it is for the people.
That's right.
Okay.
Absolutely.
One of the most important things as well, if we're talking about any layer 1 or even layer 2, is tokenomics.
Yes.
So as a lot of new layer 1s, layer 2s are upcoming, multi-chain projects, like really interesting ones, what do you believe what are the most sustainable models in tokenomics that you've seen over the last couple of years?
I think for layer 1s and layer 2s, the tokenomics themselves are still pretty nascent. There hasn't been a lot of development on the tokenomics side for layer 2s. I think this is in large part because layer 2s are still quite young. They're still quite early. Most of them still don't have their training wheels completely off.
Okay.
And so if you look at the fraud proofs, the multi-sigs, all this stuff is really still there because layer 2s are not mature enough yet to be able to take all of that off and just hope that the system is robust enough and secure enough and that it won't get hacked and the fraud proofs are perfectly without bugs. I think it'll be some time before we see the full, Vitalik often calls them, level 1 rollups. I think we're still a ways away from being ready for that. And so as a result, I think it's okay right now that the tokenomics are still on training wheels. I think it'll be some time before we see them fully mature.
Which projects, additionally, which trends, because as I mentioned earlier, you believe that trends are more important, for example, than even the stages when you invest into a project. Yeah. So which trends, apart from AI, will you be looking into? The ones that probably Dragonfly Capital will be focused on over the next few years.
Yeah.
And maybe from the perspective, not only trends, but also geography.
So we are very international investors.
Okay.
So we invest all across the globe in the U.S., Western Europe, Asia. We have a big presence here in Singapore, as well as in the Middle East, and I spend a good amount of time in Dubai. I think with respect to particular trends or particular sectors in which we're looking at, the answer more or less is that it's more of the same, which is that we've always been looking at infrastructure, layer 1s, layer 2s. We're always looking at stable coins. We're always looking at exchanges, both on-chain and off-chain. The reality is that every cycle creates new applications and new potential areas that haven't been explored before. So crypto AI is one of those examples. But at the same time, we also already know what the most important businesses in crypto are. So they are, the exchanges themselves, there are the blockchains themselves, and then there are stablecoins. And I think it's fairly clear that none of these three forms of businesses are in their final form. It's not at all clear to me that in 20 years we're going to be trading on Binance, or that in 20 years we're all going to be using Tether, or in 20 years it's only going to be Ethereum, Solana, and then everything else falls off a deep cliff. I think there's going to be a lot more room for innovation and new players to enter the space, especially as we get these sea changes in the underlying landscape of each of these different sectors. So that's a space that we always are looking at any given time. And because the prize is so large, if somebody can build the next Binance, or build the next Circle, or build the next Solana, the returns for an investor are so enormous that it's always worth taking a shot at the next generation.
You said you spend a lot of time in Dubai. Will Dragonfly also expand to Dubai or to the UAE?
So that was still TBD, something that we've considered in the past of whether or not it makes sense to build a presence there. For us, the biggest constraint is that as a VC, we have to make sure that our team is coordinated. We're not a trading firm. For trading firms, I think it's a lot easier to be distributed around the globe because every day, every 8 hours, someone hands off the trading orders to the next person who takes on the mantle. VC is a little bit different because we're not trading.
You have to be more centralized.
Exactly, we have to be a little bit more centralized, and so right now most of our team is distributed between the U.S. and Asia, and so it's sort of a 12-hour sweep that we cover within Dragonfly, and that allows us to all kind of be together, get on calls together, and be coordinated. Once you have people in Europe or the Middle East, then now all of a sudden the sun never sets, and that makes it very difficult to coordinate a team. So it's something that we may do eventually, but at least at the moment, I don't think we're there yet to be able to distribute our ventures team all the way around the globe.
Right now we are in Singapore during Token 2049 week, and how many startups have you met already, and how many meetings do you have more?
I have no idea how many startups I've met. Probably too many for me to keep count right now.
Whenever you're coming to Dubai for Token 2049 next year, are you expecting to see some interesting, let's say, Web3 gems in the UAE or not?
When I was there, I met a lot of companies that were, sort of local companies in the region, as well as, of course, a lot of the international folks. I mean, everybody comes out to Dubai when Token 2049 is happening, and I'm quite close with the Polygon team, the Avail team, who are in Dubai. We're investors in both of those, as well as a number of other teams that have come into Dubai in the relatively recent past. So it's one of the super hubs for crypto activity around the world. I'd say probably in my view, Dubai. The three biggest cities for crypto in the world today are number 1 New York, number 2 Singapore, and then number 3 Dubai. So I think Dubai, in just the last few years, has really made a play to become one of these global crypto hubs. So it's a space that I'm very intrigued to see how the Dubai government and VARA and also with Abu Dhabi with ADGM to see how they continue attracting more and more of the industry into the region. And of course, it's great for the Middle East because there's so much growth that's happening there. But at least for myself, I mean, the biggest hope that I have for Token 2049 this year is that we get better weather than we got this last year.
Understood. Thank you so much, Haseeb. Right now, we move to the last part of our interview. Stay tuned with Encrypted.
Rapid fire questions.
Are you ready? Okay, Haseeb, if you had to explain a blockchain to a child, how would you do this in one sentence?
Blockchain to a child. I would say a blockchain is a technology that allows a bunch of people who don't know each other to agree about what happened.
Okay. Name 5 qualities that you believe a real entrepreneur should have.
5 qualities.
Yes.
Entrepreneurs should be driven, obsessed, energetic, positive, and crazy.
What would you never do while building a company?
What would I never do while building a company?
Yes.
What would I never do while building a company? I guess I would never lie to my team about how things are going.
Okay. What do you believe the biggest misconception people have about Web3?
Biggest misconception people have about Web3, I think, is that Web3 still doesn't have any applications. Okay. I think that's the most common misconception I see from people both within Web3 and people looking at Web3 from the outside.
What's your favorite programming language?
I'd say favorite programming language is Ruby.
Okay, finish the sentence. My business philosophy is?
My business philosophy is the way you do anything is the way you do everything.
Okay. If you could time travel, which era would you visit and why?
If I could time travel, I would absolutely want to go into the future.
Okay.
So I would want to see
Which year?
What does 2100 look like.
Okay. The next big trend to follow?
The next big trend to follow, I would say crypto AI is probably the most interesting new trend.
What is your personal formula for success?
My personal formula for success, I think it is change your mind as quickly as possible.
Understood. And Dubai for you is associated with?
Dubai for me is associated with, I guess I would say it's hard charging innovation.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Today we had Haseeb Qureshi, Managing Partner at Dragonfly Capital. Thank you so much for watching and see you next time.
From the gleaming skyscrapers of Dubai to the innovation hubs of the Middle East and beyond, Encrypted brings you thought-provoking discussions, exclusive insights, and stories of innovation that will leave you inspired.
This episode of Encrypted is sponsored by the HBAR Foundation. The HBAR Foundation cultivates vibrant economies and ecosystems on the Hedera network by providing financial, community, and marketing support for projects, attracting millions of users and billions of dollars to the ecosystem.